Welcome back to Forza Horizon 4, and today I've got a different kind of video. I'm going to be going over really the basics on how to tune a drag car in this game. It is pretty similar to Horizon 3 and Horizon 2, but there are some differences because they've added in these drag tyres obviously, which have massively changed the way you launch the cars. So I'm going to be doing this on the TVR, I believe it's Cerbera Speed 12, I've probably said that wrong. Haven't tried this car yet. I think it can do a 7.5 maybe, so we'll try and get near that. It's obviously not going to be as good as it can be because I'm doing it live here just to show you what to do. So I am going to be going over all-wheel drive, since that is the quickest for most cars on the leaderboards. If you'd like a rear-wheel drive tutorial, make sure to put that in the comments so I can see if anyone actually wants it. Now I'm going to start off with the basics. So on the parts you want to equip to the cars, I always like to start on conversion, because the first thing you want to do when you're tuning a drag car is check the engine swaps, because you don't want to go upgrading the stock engine when the ones you can put in are probably quicker. I've had a look, I think this V12 is quicker, you can get about 100 more horsepower than the stock engine, so you want to equip that. All-wheel drive obviously, as it is a drag car you want to get the quickest times with, and if there's the option, there's only twin turbos on this. If it does give you the option of supercharger, twin turbo or single turbo, always go twin turbo. For some reason in this game the twin turbo weighs the same as the single turbo, which makes no sense at all, but the turbos are always better than the superchargers, I think. Now you've done the conversion section, I always like to go over to engine. What you want to do is just equip all of the power upgrades, except in some cars the oil/cooling section you don't want to equip, because you're going to see here it's adding about 6 horsepower, but then it's also adding 7 kilograms of weight. I'm not actually sure on this car if you want it or not. I know on the McLaren F1 GT you don't want the race oil/cooling fitted, because it actually slows you down over the quarter mile, having that extra weight when you're only getting a bit more power. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Just for this video I'm going to equip it, so we'll equip all of those parts now. Right, now you've equipped all the power engine parts to give it the most power you can and torque. You want to come over to platform and handling. It's relatively simple. Just stick on the lightest brakes. Now for the springs you want to put on the rally springs and dampers. For some reason this is quicker. I think it's because you can make it a lot softer with the rally springs, which means you can like bounce into the launch, which is kind of how this game works. You want the car to like lean into the launch. It will make more sense in a minute. Even though the rally ones weigh more, you always want to equip the rally ones for most cars I've tried. I don't think there's any that you don't want to. Then obviously the most weight reduction you can, because the lighter the car is, the quicker it's going to go. Now for your clutch and your gearbox and stuff, just stick the best one on, lightest, and it'll give you quicker gear changes. Best gearbox, best drive line, and stick the race diff on, because it's important that you do that, so you can adjust the differential, because the stock diff for all-wheel drive swaps is set to 65%, which isn't anywhere near right, so you want to make sure you've got that race diff on. Now tyre compound, obviously drag racing, want the drag tyres. Now this is a weird one, the front tyre width. Sometimes you want to put the biggest tyre width on. Other times you want to keep the smallest tyre width, because you're just using all-wheel drive pretty much to launch, then you don't actually need it for any more. So you're just adding extra grip and resistance and extra weight if you add the bigger tyre width sometimes. I'm not going to go with it. I'm not quite sure if you need to. You don't need to do what I'm doing. If you're tuning other cars, I'd recommend just starting with the widest front tyre width. But for this instance, I'm just not going to go with it, because I'm just going to see what happens. And you do always want the biggest rear tyre width if you're tuning all-wheel drive. Now rims, just find the lightest rims you can. I think if you go on to the first set of rims, these ones are light, and then you can get on these rims. There are, I believe, 2 drag racing style ones. Yeah, these 2 weld racing wheels. Get them if you want. I'll just go with them, seems as everyone uses them. Now, you don't want to increase your rim size. In some rare cases with like front wheel drive tunes and so on, you will want to do that. All-wheel drive tunes, I don't think you ever do really. Then I'm not really sure about the track width. It's a new feature in this game. It doesn't add any weight, it just increases obviously the track width. So I'm not really sure if this is quicker or not. I just don't go with it. It just seems to be aesthetic, really. It doesn't actually affect the power of the car. Now, the biggest mistake I see people making when they make drag tunes for cars is they put the aero on. You never want to put the aero on unless it's the really rare case. I think some front-wheel drive tunes benefit from the front splitter. Otherwise, you never want the aero on. I saw in one of AR12's videos, he equipped the aero just so he could adjust it down to 0. Even if you do that, the aero creates more downforce set to 0 than it does with the car with no aero on. So don't equip the wing or the splitter. It's just a stupid idea and it's going to slow you down. None of the leaderboard times have those things on. So that's a basic overview of the parts you want to equip. As I said, the only real thing that you want to have a look at is the front tyre width. Sometimes you want the thinner one, sometimes you want the bigger rear one. So that's that for the parts. Now we're going to move on to the actual tuning setup. Now, moving on to the actual tune setup of the car, this is the most important part. You can get all of the parts right. If you don't tune the car right, it's going to be hopeless and you're still going to be no better off. So what I'm going to do to start with is just apply the base tune I like to apply before I start fine-tuning the car. Usually this tune will completely change, but I like to just put this base tune on just to get like a rough example of what the car can do. So you can probably do this as well. You'll find it easier to fine-tune the car if you stick a base tune on. So if you're tuning all-wheel drive, I like to stick the front tyre pressures down all the way to the lowest. Just before we start, I want to clarify I'm on kilograms, meters, whatever, newtons, not whatever it is, imperial. So if you're using pounds, inches, you can just kind of copy my setup. Just look where the sliders are, but the values on the end are going to be wrong, obviously, because you're using different units. Now for tyres, I just like to stick them to the lowest when I'm doing all drive, 15 psi. Gearing, I just like to set my final drive down to 2.2 and then just leave it there for now, because I find it's easier to find the right first gear length if the car starts off not spinning. Then you can just keep upping first gear, like moving it along like that, if you don't know what I mean, giving it a short first gear until it starts to just spin. I find that the easiest way to find the right first gear length. Then alignment, set them all to 0. You don't really want camber angle or anything when you're creating a drag car. Now front caster, I just have it on 6.5. Even if it doesn't start on it, I just move it to 6.5 because that's what I'm used to. Anti-roll bars, I tend to just put all the way to soft. So let's go ahead and do that. I think that top one, there we go. Now springs is a weird one. I tend to keep it the highest ride height, but I've noticed in this car the front ride height comes higher than the rear ride height, which I found in this game you don't really want the front higher than the rear. So I'm going to leave it like that for now. And then rear springs is a weird one. Sometimes I have them all the way stiff at the rear, sometimes I have it all the way soft. For this I'm just going to start off all the way soft and we can fine tune from there when we actually get to the drag event. Now damping is a weird one as well. I tend to just stick front rebound all the way down, then I'll just stiffen all the rest. As I say, this isn't going to be perfect for every car, it's just a start base tune so you can get the idea of what you're doing. Stiffen all of them. You do want the front bump stiffness on 10 for pretty much every car you tune. It just keeps the front up pretty much, if you know what I mean. Aero, obviously you don't have any aero, so you don't want it. Brakes, this is completely irrelevant to the actual speed of the car. I just like to set it to 45, 115. Then diff, I like to just go 100% acceleration 0 and 100% acceleration 0 again for your rear diff. Balance, I like to go 78. It's pretty much the same as Forza Horizon 3, just go off the same kind of thing. Now before we move on to the drag event and try fine tuning, I want to talk about the 0 to 60 stats on the left and the top speed. People keep commenting on like AR12's videos and stuff, people who don't have a clue what they're doing keep commenting, oh this car's got 0.2 second 0 to 60 or 0.2, 0.8. Those stats are completely irrelevant. They're never right. The quickest times never have the quickest 0 to 60. They might have the quickest 0 to 100, but not the quickest 0 to 60. Just ignore them completely. Tune the car based on how it feels. So that's our base setup. I'll just flick through it one more time so you can get used to it. Take a photo if you want. So there's tyres, gearing, alignment, anti-roll bars, springs, damping, aero, brake, and your diff. So that's that. Moving on to the fine tuning of the car, I'm going to try and make this as quick but also as in depth as possible, because I don't want this video being half an hour. You're probably already half asleep, so we're going to try and get it done as quick as possible. Now, difficulty settings, quickly before we start, I'm going to tune this car for manual clutch. The difference really between manual clutch and manual in this game is manual, you'll typically get a slower launch, but you'll be able to change gear better and then catch up. Manual clutch, you'll get a quicker launch, then the gear changes won't be as crisp and you'll end up a bit slower. You can do a dodgy launch with manual clutch, but only the best guys are doing that, you don't need to know it. The main settings really that matter are your traction control, turn it off, and your stability control, turn it off. Also, make sure your braking is on ABS on or ABS off. If you have it on assisted and you have the braking line on, it will put the brakes on before you get to the speed camera, which you don't want. So now you've done that, quick overview of what we're going to do here is we're going to start off with the gearing of the car. What we're going to do is move first gear more and more to the right, increasing the value to shorten that gear till it gets to the point where the car's just about to not spin. So it'll be just on the edge of when you floor it is a full throttle launch. It won't spin, but it'll be just on the edge. And then what we're going to do after that is we're going to move, I'm going to tune this car for 4 gears. We're going to move second, third and fourth to a point where it's a smooth curve between all the gears, where they get progressively shorter. You don't want it so your second gear's really long and then your third gear's even longer. That's wrong. You want it to be first gear longest, second gear second gear a bit shorter, third a bit shorter, fourth a bit shorter. It keeps the car in the power band a bit better because you are in the higher gears for longer. So that's a quick overview of that. We're just going to try the car first of all with the stock base tune on, and you're going to see the first gear is way too long and it completely bogs off the start. That is not at all what you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut. I'm going to do what I said, move the first gear more and more to the right until I get to a point where the car's just about to spin but it isn't spinning. Right, I messed around with the gears a bit there, did what I said, adjusted the first gear more and more to a shortened first gear, and then moved the other gears so it progressively, when you changed through the gears, you kept it in the power band. This is the end result I've ended up with. You may have just seen it there, but I'll show you again. Spun a bit at the start there, but this is just a tutorial, so it doesn't really matter. And there you go, gradually went through the gears, half decent, already got a 608. And I'm doing this live, so obviously I'm doing this a lot slower than I usually would. So now I've tuned those gears, I'm kind of happy with them. We'll just stick with them for now for the tutorial's sake. You can just keep doing what I said, keep adjusting the first gear until you get it bang on, and adjust the other gears so you can try and make it quicker. But that is kind of a basic overview on how to tune those gears. Now the main things you want to adjust from there are your springs and your damping. What I'm going to try to start with is that I'm going to lower these front springs to a point where the car's front ride height is about the same. I'm going to go 11.2 because there is 11.5. Typically, as I said in the bit before, you want the car to be lower or the same at the front than the rear. You don't want it to be higher at the front, is what I found in this game. Just going to try that and see what happens. There we go, didn't really make too much difference, but it wouldn't. Now, as I said, really tuning is just all about messing around with the setup until you get it to a point where it's perfect. Because all the cars are different. One universal tune doesn't work for all the best. If you put the best McLaren F1 tune on this car, it'll probably be crap. So what I'm going to go with, things you want to try typically, you want to try stiffening the rear progressively, so maybe go from 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 through the rear stiffness to try that out, and try and do one thing at a time. If you change multiple things at the same time, then you won't know which one's made it quicker. So if you're going to change anything, do one at a time. Then things you can also change, make sure you keep your front bump at 10. Your rebound, progressively bring that down, so maybe 8, then 6, then 4, and I tend to adjust the rear rebound and the rear bump at the same time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try my rear springs at about 30, and then I'm going to try my rear bump and so on at around 7.5 is what I'll go with, and just see if it makes any difference. So I just messed around with the damping there, and I found that 2.5-ish was kind of the best, so I've gone with that. Now I'm going to try adjusting springs, so maybe try and stiffen the rear a bit more, and the front springs I might try a bit of stiffness as well, so I'll do that now. So after a bit of adjustment, messing around, doing what I said, I've managed to get it doing the 574. I think this thing would definitely benefit from the wider front tyres, because this guy I'm against, his launch is clearly better and his tune isn't that great because I gain on him massively. So I reckon if you put the front tyres on, you get this down to a low 5 or even a 4. So what I ended up doing there, I'll explain what I went through and what my thought process was. So first things first, I got the damping. I got to this point, thought that was pretty good because I tried a load of different combinations of stiffness, brought it down, found that a softer setup for the rear bump and rebound was pretty good. Then I moved on to springs. I tried a couple of things. Tried rear at about 20, and the front I kept pretty constant at 40 the whole time. But the rear I just kept adjusting, trying different points all the way along it, and the same with the front. You want to try soft and stiff. Just watch the car is the key, really. Another thing I did was go to gearing, is I actually upped the first gear to 4.85, making it a bit shorter, just so I had a bit more acceleration in that first gear, which I think got me a better launch. So pretty much an overview of how you fine tune the car is to stick that base setup on. You don't really need to change the diff or the tyres, they are pretty much bang on from the base tune. Alignment, you might make like a tiny bit of camber or something in some cases, but you don't usually need it. Anti-roll bars I tend to keep soft. Springs, I'll just go through a few combinations you can use. So you can try different things. Try stiff front, soft rear for both damping and springs. So for damping it doesn't really work, you want to just keep the rear soft like it is now. Or you can try soft front, stiff rear for both, so that'd be damping on about 8 for rear rebound and rear bump, and your springs on about 65 as I am now, or a bit higher. And you can just keep messing around with the damping and the springs. They tend to be the main thing that get you time. And then if you get them right, you can then start to up your first gear, like I did to 8.5 to make the acceleration a bit quicker. So that's pretty much as simple as I can make it overview of tuning. It is pretty much just a trial and error thing. The more you do it, the more you get used to how the cars react, and you can start to tune the car to be a lot faster. So that's it really. This is a kind of tutorial thing I haven't done before. If you liked it and want like a real drive one for instance, make sure to tell me in the comments down below. That's it from me, and I'll see you next time.